welcome everybody. Here we have somebody very interesting. Brian, he's going to introduce himself, but also the topic as well is very interesting. There's been a lot of vibe about vibe coding, I think, from ending last year, ever since the Gen AI vibes came on. So let's see what Brian has to say about building secure, scalable apps in the era of vibe coding. So, Brian, you can take it away.
Awesome. Okay, thank you so much, Cyril. Super excited to be talking to you about this. I say this also as someone who was very skeptical of AI back in the day. I think when you had like ChatGPT and then Llama started coming out from Meta, and there was all this stuff that was just like happening, and people were like, "Oh, are you building with this? Are you building with that?" I was so against all of it. I was like, "Why do you need AI? I don't need this. I have like my skills." And I definitely had a little bit of ego, I think, behind it. And then I started looking at these tools and I was like, oh, okay, maybe there is something here. And then it's kind of like, so like the pendulum shifts from like super skeptical to like, okay, now I'm like an adopter of this. And now I'm kind of swinging back the pendulum towards like being skeptical again because it's like there's value to it. But I think like in this talk, we're going to explore a lot of different topics. And I want to sort of encourage anyone to explore AI, but also explore it with a skeptical lens. So we're going to talk about all that. So I'll share my screen and then we'll get into it. Okay, cool. Can you see my screen? But like full screen? Okay, sweet. So my name is Brian Hough, and this is a talk on why vibe coding isn't enough. So super excited to be talking with you all today. So I gave a sort of derivative of this talk a couple of months ago, and I actually was using a vibe coding platform to build an app, and I wanted to basically explore that as a practice. So I do a lot of that type of work, like for clients, like for myself, for exploring, like just like hacking around and building a bunch of stuff. So I wanted to build a talk with your documents type application. So I put in like kind of like your classic prompt, and then I was basically like, hey, can you help me go and build this? So I used a tool called bolt.new, and if you're not familiar with that, it's kind of like Replit or Lovable. It's kind of like you build an app in the cloud and it sort of codes out all this stuff for you. So it's great for prototyping, it's great for everything, and it built something like this. And I was like, okay, like this is pretty cool. This looks exactly like what I would want. It has a drop zone loader. You can load in PDFs, has some hard coded, like limits and all that type of stuff. So I was trying to say like, can we like punch this up a notch? Could we make it cooler? I want to now have a list of my documents. So now we're sort of getting into database modeling a little bit. So it's going to do, its thing. And this is going to come back with a list of your documents. Now this was obviously hard coded, but the idea of it would be that you could have a list of documents, you'd have some metadata associated with them, and you could sort of have an interactive list of your documents, which is like cool, being able to add a database now to your application. Now I want to do some conversations. So data modeling for conversations is a little bit complicated if you've ever like tried to do modeling around that, because you have to think like if you're a user and you have access to your chats, you sort of want to look up like what are the chats that I'm a user of, and then like in that conversation get a list of the messages. So then if you are with other people, you have like other chats, then that's kind of like it's in like a whole other authentication pattern of like if you are a user that's in a list of users of a conversation, then show me that list of conversations. If you get added to a chat, if you get removed from a chat, make that list reflective of that. But in a document like this is you're literally just talking to your own documents, so the authentication is just yourself. So it's a little bit simpler. I don't want to have a list of my conversations. So gave it that prompt. And then now we have our chat conversation history. Then we want to add some authentication. So, obviously we can't just have everybody talking to everybody's documents, because that would be like crazy if you could have like you upload a contract for your business or, like your company, and then like I could go and see that, or like Sarah could go and see that, or something like that, or Daryl could go and see that. That would be nuts. So you want to make sure that things are locked down to the specific user. So it adds a authentication and login for that. So it's so easy to like work with AI and add all of these things, because you think like, oh, it doesn't get any easier than that. It's doing all the stuff that I need. And then, I want to throw in a little bit of like UI fluff. So I was like, okay, can you make an analytics dashboard? I want to be able to visualize, all this information. So it's going to think for a little bit. And then now we have an analytics dashboard. And that's where like AI makes it so easy. It's so easy to just use prompts to make all the code. Like, why would you use anything else? And then I told the prompt, I said, like, okay, this is my absolute last question. I want to bring this to millions of people tomorrow. Like, I think I could make a gazillion dollars. I didn't really say this, but it's like you get in your mindset of like, I think we could launch this tomorrow and like make a gazillion dollars. I want a cool landing page. Like, sell me this app to like the world, right? You can make a landing page. It's going to go think for a little bit. And now it's just straight up making funnels. So you could make like your own funnel for your app as your landing page. Like that's just nuts because usually like you'd have to pay for like a separate other platform to make a landing page and like have all the marketing funnels and everything. So you could just prompt it. Now different AIs will be better at that than other platforms. So you might want to experiment a little bit with it. But I was like, okay, for like this app, that's like kind of a demo. I'm like, this is pretty cool. So now our app is ready for prime time, right? We've got auth, we've got our database stuff, we've got drop zone for being able to upload PDFs, we've got conversation history. Everything's great, right? No, everything is not great. Now, you would never know this unless you actually started exploring the code. And that's where, if you were think like before all the AI coding world came out, right, you would probably get code from Stack Overflow. Stack Overflow, one of my first mentors for the first job I ever had in tech, my like tech lead mentor literally told me, he said, if you ever copy any code from the internet, from Stack Overflow, you have to 100% understand what all that code is doing. Now, AI abstracts that even further. So before we would kind of like copy pasta some stuff if there was like a solution to solve our problem. But now you have like whole code bases where you might not even understand how any of it was put together. You know that maybe it works, but you don't actually understand the underlying foundation of how it works and why it works. And maybe there's a lot of stuff that you might miss. So are there insecure dependencies? We don't even know that. We might not even be able to test that. DDoS and bot attacks, those are things that plague startups to enterprise applications. And if we can't validate that we can keep our app and our users safe, how do we know that our app is ready for prime time? Same thing with zero trust architecture. We don't actually know if we have zero trust. We probably don't. We probably have like 100 trust. We probably do not the opposite of zero trust. Authentication, authorization. The AI said that we have those things, but do we actually have them? Like, not really sure. Can we actually scale? So sure, I'm just a user, I'm testing it, but let's say that we go from one user to 100, 100 to 1,000, 1,000 to a million. Will that actually scale? We don't really know. We can't even answer. We don't even know how to test that. Rate limits and spam monitoring, we have no way to test that. File malware upload scanning. This is a big one, especially if you're working with files. Can you validate that the files that you upload are actually safe in your system or if users use them? We're going to get into a lot of these topics, but I want you to also think about denial of wallet prevention mechanisms. So if you're using AI in your application, like, do you track how much your users use those services? Because if not, you might wake up tomorrow and have a bill of like $5,000. And these are like real stories that I could tell you about. I can't tell you like who, but like I could tell you these are real people that have experienced these types of problems. And then they wake up and then they have to like go talk to like Anthropic or like OpenAI and be like, oh my gosh, I have a bill of like 10 grand. Like, what do I do? And it's kind of like, they're going to be like, yeah, you got to pay it. And then that gets to a whole other thing. So you really want to think about how are your users using like these types of systems and these processes. And I don't say this to like fearmonger. I say this of like, these are all avoidable problems. You just want to know what the problems are before you ship this live. So I say this of like, we're going to present a bunch of problems. I'm not one of those people that gives problems and then it's like, good luck. We're going to actually build a playbook to talk about these problems. But I want you to think about this of like, these are a lot of things that AI abstracts. So we as developers, engineers, builders need to think about how we're going to solve these. And the biggest problem or the biggest opportunity for you as a builder is you think about this of like, how do I scale my app to a million users? Because you're not just building something for a hobby. Maybe you're building something as a hobby, but if you want to build something that scales en masse, you want to sort of think about like, how could this scale to like the maximum amount of people? A lot of people like minimum viable product. I want to think about maximum viable product. Like what if everything worked out in an amazing way and you hit scale, you go viral, you're on Reddit threads, everyone's like, oh my gosh, like you got to check out this app. You want to be that story, but you don't want to be that story and then have a bunch of problems like come like the next day. So we're going to talk about a lot of this stuff. By the way, so how are we doing on or do we have any questions or are we good to keep going? I saw some conversations in the chat. I just want to make sure we're good.
Okay, I think you can go on with the flow. We are
No
just,
question. People are just talking.
yes,
Okay,
and at
cool.
the end, we'll have like maybe
Um,
15 minutes
but feel
to.
free to like interrupt me if there's like a cool question. But yeah, just let me know. Okay, cool. So my name is Brian Hough, and I am an AWS DevTools Hero. I was formerly in AWS Community Builder, so shout out to AWS Community Builders or anyone that's a community builder in the chat, because that was like really where I got my start in cloud. And I feel like everything really accelerated once I learned sort of how the sausage is made. So you think about like all these apps that you probably use, like Gmail, Outlook, Teams, Zoom, like I'm trying to think like what are the other Slack, um, what are the other ones? Like Google, like search engines, all the tools like Google Drive, like all the tools that you use in a given day. Those are all probably running on different clouds, but they're all running in the cloud. And I encourage anybody to think about like if you could build like your app like tomorrow, like your dream app. That's like the methodology that I had when I was learning how to code. And that's really what accelerated a lot of the work that I do. So I run a company called Playbook. It's mainly a software development agency. So we work with a lot of clients from like startup to enterprise, and we help them build workloads, so like AI systems, applications, servers, a lot of AI stuff recently. But a lot of those roots started from just learning how to code. And I encourage everyone to like learn like all the cool stuff you can build on AWS, because if you can understand like how AWS fundamentally works, you could build all the apps that I mean, you won't be able to build it like probably in a weekend, but over the course of like 3, 6 months, a year, you could build like an enterprise app. So it's super, there's so much opportunity in cloud, and especially with AI nowadays. So it's my little spiel about learning how to code. So in today, we're going to be talking about the era of vibes and vibe coding, and basically like how you can pay attention to the space and leverage it. We're then going to learn about a concept called shifting development left. And this is a concept that is based upon some security fundamentals, but it's more about like learning how to develop with AI workflows. Then we're going to talk about how to build a real Gen AI app, just like what you just saw. And then we're going to build a playbook for production. So you're going to, so kind of like all those problems I showed you before, we're going to talk through how to solve a lot of those problems. So this is going to be great. Ooh, CB. Okay, I see some chats from Babesh about community builders. Nice. Yeah, dev tools for the win. That's awesome. Okay, cool. So let's enter the era of vibes. So we are in the era of vibe coding. If you're not using AI, your colleagues probably are, so you probably should be using them too. So there's a lot of chatter about AI, right? And especially for the last couple years, to be honest. So what does vibe coding mean? So if you're not familiar with vibe coding, that's rapidly building code with AI. So you're doing zero-shot prompts, and kind of what I showed you before of like, build me this interface. I'm having this bug and this is the problem. Can you help me solve a solution? AI will go and be like, sure, looking at this, like this is da da da. And you sort of, you know how ChatGPT or like these like Claude or Perplexity, like how these AI apps work. So that's basically what you're doing when you're coding with AI. And it's using modern tools and technologies, and you basically prompt and deploy recursively until you get the outcome that you want. So it makes it so easy. Now, a lot of these tools could be like invisible infrastructure, could be generative coding tools, could be plug and play backends, could be zero code or low code builders. So the invisible infrastructure is like, I don't want to think about like the infrastructure networking components. I just want you to like help me get this service or system live. So I think about like, these are tools that I've used before. So like Netlify, we were talking about Heroku earlier. Vercel, Render, Railway, those are ways to just like get workloads onto the cloud. Um, Now I want to generatively build code. So help me write the hard stuff. Help, like I have this bug. Can you help me fix it? So I think about like Hero, Cursor, Windsurf. Those are AI-based code editors. Those are really great if you just want to like have an AI programming assistant just like on your code base. Super great. Um, Plug and play backends, like I need auth data or functions, and I don't want to build them. I want them to just like be plugged into my app. So I think about like Supabase, I think about Convex, I think about Xano. Those are just ways to like bring in different functionalities or different features. And then I want to just drag and drop and publish my data to the web. So literally what I was showing you before of like you code and then you build it, That's basically those drag and drop systems. So I think about bolt.new, which I had mentioned. I used that actually for that app. Replit, Lovable. I use those three pretty interchangeably. Really, really great for prototyping and building. Like if you're trying to build out an experience or you're trying to basically get an idea of something and you don't want to be affecting your own code base, you want to kind of have a separate isolated environment. I use those three very regularly. Now, what does a pipeline look like? So when you're vibe coding, it's literally prompt and deploy. There's kind of two steps, and prompting is mainly like the core component of it. Maybe you do a little bit of tweaking here or there, but it's mainly prompt and then deploy. Now, when you shift development left, you're going to be prompting, but then you're going to be scanning and you're going to be building, you're going to be automating, you're going to be reviewing. You're going to be doing way more things in the process before you actually deploy. And that's what shifting development left is. I went to a security conference about 2 years ago, and I learned about this concept of shifting security left. So that's where you're not necessarily testing security on like a dev or staging environment. You're testing security maybe like before you even commit your code to Git or something like that. So the concept that I was thinking of was more about like shifting development as a whole left. So you are going to be shifting security left, but security is a piece of the development lifecycle. It's and sort of like the scanning, but then also the reviewing and the automating. You also bring in a lot of those elements where like prompting is just a part of it, but then you want to like build, you want to test, you want to automate, and that's where I sort of encourage you to think about like there's way more than just prompting, and this is how you actually build a playbook for production. So now we're going to talk about productionizing the vibes. So the high-level architecture, if you're building anything, is that it's going to have authentication, so log in and log out. It's going to have an API, so CRUD functionality, how can users do this stuff? File storage, how can users upload files and work with files? MLOps, that's kind of like, let's throw in some AI goodness in there, like let's make it cool and fun, because everyone likes AI. AI is fun, and functional as well. Hosting and content delivery networks, how do we get content out to our users? We have servers, we have databases, and we maybe have vector databases if you're storing information related to files or look up information. You might be using like a vector database with your ML ops or AI or LLM ops workflow. So those are sort of the 8 core components of the architecture. Pretty simple. Now, if you're building stuff on AWS, this is basically going to be what it looks like. So you have probably Cognito. These are kind of like your AWS suspects of like probably what your typical AI or just app in general on AWS is going to look like. So we'll have authentication with Cognito. We have AppSync for our API. You might use API Gateway if you're doing streaming or something like that. You might be doing S3 file storage, Bedrock for ML ops. You might be using CloudFront for your hosting, CDN, and distribution. ECR, which is the container registry for deploying and hosting containers. Kubernetes for distributing that workload. DynamoDB for database, and then OpenSearch service. So this is for your vector database. So these are kind of be like your main services. You're probably going to use other ones like as well, but these are sort of the main ones that I typically use when I'm building apps. Now, if you're building this, so I told you kind of like the services. So how do you fundamentally actually build these types of systems? So Python is awesome for backend servers. TypeScript is awesome for your front-end applications. GraphQL as a great API layer between your app and the server, or basically where your data is hosted. Docker, amazingly important for building containers for your workloads. Kubernetes for distributing those workloads, and CDK. Oh, and yes, I saw in the comment about Bedrock Agent Core, Daryl. Yes, I'm very interested in like checking that out. I haven't had actually a chance to like actively investigate it and check it out as much, but I'm really excited. If you do check it out, I'd be curious to know like what you think of it, because it seems like it'll really accelerate a lot of AI workloads for folks. So I'm definitely excited to check it out, especially over this summer. So if you can build an app with these fundamentals, and CDK is for infrastructure as code, so how you can basically write a recipe to deploy your cloud infrastructure. If you can build an app with these types of services and tools, you're going to be like in the best shape. So the first question that we want to, oh, and Bhavesh, yes, Strands agent. I definitely want to talk to you about Strands at a later point, because it's like really great for building agents from what I've heard. So I've used like other tools for building AI agents, but Strands is pretty cool too. Okay, so when we build an app with sort of like one of those AI editors, like one of those AI builders, we don't actually know if it's safe, and we don't really know that it's safe because when you just take for granted the front end, right? This is kind of like the main component of the app. The Gen AI can lead to vulnerabilities. Now, if you are a developer, you've probably used a tool called NPM if you've built apps, and you might use NPM audit. So NPM audit can tell you what's happening in an application related to vulnerabilities of the open source code bases that you're working with. Now, I downloaded the app that I got from bolt.new and I ran this. So it'll download to a zip folder. I unzipped it and then I ran NPM audit on it. And it found 6 vulnerabilities, one of which is critical and one of which was high. Now, these AI editors, like they won't tell you that these errors exist. They're just going to happen. And you need to really know this because one critical and one high could become 2 critical. It could become 3 critical if those errors or issues manifest over a series of weeks or months. But you would never know that unless you ran stuff like this. So we could launch this live to our users, but we shouldn't. Like we need to make sure that there's no vulnerabilities when we ship code live. So how do we actually secure the app? So there's a lot of problems that can come in. So I think there's a great solution for this that's very easy, and you just plug in Amazon Q to your code editor, and I'm going to show you a pattern, and it just works. So there's a VS Code extension for Amazon Q, and you can literally take code and then send it to your prompt. So that's what I did here. I literally was like, take my package.json file, which has all of the dependencies, and then I said send to prompt here. Now, it think for a little bit, or thunk for a little bit, it thought for a little bit, and then what it ended up doing was it reorganized all of these and upgraded all of them. Now, if you've ever like tried to do this manually, you might upgrade like next. But next is like, and that's next package for like front end stuff, but you might upgrade that. But then it's going to say, oh, but it's dependent on these other packages that are already installed. So then you would need to like remove those other packages and then like reinstall this. And those types of upgrades are so tedious and it's very time consuming and you end up sort of like not getting what you need to do. And then it's a whole thing. So Q was able to just literally upgrade all of this stuff just for me in like a series of a minute, maybe less. And then I was literally able to take 6 vulnerabilities into 0. So a very easy way to just do code scanning for your application and like minimum viable, like this is a requirement, like you should 100% do this, and it just removed vulnerabilities. Easy way to add in AI and help make your app more secure. Now, is our infrastructure scalable to build and deploy? Now, you get infrastructure in these AI like coding platforms, but if you don't really know like what you're paying for, especially if it's free, chances are like if you got like 1,000 users that are using your app regularly, it probably will crash the system, like, or it's going to run up a bill that would be a lot. So CDK is a infrastructure as code pipeline that works really great if you're building on AWS. Highly recommend it. I was using CDK for the backend, so I was building the server, the AI talk with your documents like brain, if you will. So I use CDK and I use Python, and you activate your Python virtual environment and then you pip install the requirements. So this is like kind of like your get started with Python if you've never like worked with Python before. Easy way to just build this. So it will bootstrap this template. This is what CDK ends up creating. And we're mainly going to focus on the app.py file and then this main stack definition folder, which is going to include all of our stacks. So those are basically like, I want to build this type of service on AWS. You make a stack, and then that's where you reference that in app.py. Now, if you're building and deploying with CDK, you're going to bootstrap once per account per environment. You're going to synthesize the CloudFormation template that it will make for your resources, and then you deploy that to the cloud in your account. And then basically what we're going to do is we're going to have a user that can talk to our app, and that app can talk to the server. Now, if you're building in production, like this is basically like what you're going to need to build. Something like this that can actually scale. Now, don't get like intimidated. It's like, oh, Kubernetes, oh, EC2 stuff, oh, EKS, load balancing. The CDK will abstract a lot of this complexity and make it really easy. But like if your vibe coding editor like cannot show you how this is distributed and deployed or like give you a map of this, assume that it's not this complicated and assume that it can't actually scale. So that's kind of where like you want to make sure that it's in different availability zones. There's, replication across different, within your VPC. There's a lot of like important complexity to building productionized apps. So when we want to deploy our app, this is what we're going to do. So we're going to build our Next.js app. We already have the code from our coding editor. We're going to containerize it with Docker. And a lot of the code that's in this that I referenced in the presentation, there will be a QR code at the end. So you'll get all the code. So don't worry. You don't have to like screenshot and copy all this down. This would be a lot of writing. But anyways, you're gonna have a Docker file for your app, and then you're gonna use Docker. You could do this locally. I did it locally, but you could also automate it in like GitHub Actions or something like that. And then you're gonna push that to ECR. This is like your holder for the container. So a lot of these like Gen AI builders will like containerize your app for you. But this is like if you want to do it yourself, ECR is going to be your jam, and you just need Docker to like basically like house like or basically like build it, and then ECR is going to be like where it's housed in the cloud. Now, so the next step. So we're going to be building this stack for EKS. So EKS is the Kubernetes component of taking your container. So you build your app, you containerize it, and now you want to like put it on an endpoint that like someone could like go to a URL and see it. So that's what Kubernetes is going to do. It's going to distribute that workload. Now what you can do is you can make it have multiple availability zones so that it has high availability. And it's basically just like distributing the workload across multiple components. We're going to lock it down within a VPC, and then we're going to basically have this now running on a URL. So this app is then also going to add a load balancer. So the load balancer is going to help distribute basically traffic to pods across those availability zones and make sure that like if you have like 1,000 people that like rush to like your app, it will like distribute that load as per like what your containers or like what your distribution allows for. This just also helps with crash. So think like if you're going in, like if you have like 1,000 people going into a supermarket, you're basically like making another door as opposed to just having everyone crammed into like one single door, because like there could be overflow. You sort of want to spread out like the need for people to access something across different doors, if you will. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to use CDK. We're going to deploy our EKS stack, and then that's going to create EKS. It's going to create availability zone number 1. That's going to have EC2 node group with the Kubernetes pods, have NAT gateway, elastic networking interface. There's a lot of stuff. There's a control plane, but you don't need to really necessarily worry about this because the CDK will like deploy a lot of this infrastructure stuff for you. But it is important to just think about like fundamentally how it's working, but this is the value of infrastructure as code. It will just create these patterns that work, and you just know that it works because you'll be able to go into AWS and like validate that it works. It's going to create a second AZ, and then it's going to add that load balancer. So then we're going to add a content distribution network. So we're going to add CloudFront. CloudFront is going to basically be an HTTPS front for our application, because the EKS load balancer, it will use HTTP, but we want to have SSL termination, so HTTPS, which is like secure HTTP. Also global distribution, we could add WAF and DDoS protections. This is kind of where we validate that we do have security around our app. So it's literally as easy as, hey, I already built the EKS stack. The outputs from this will become the inputs in our next stack definition, which is the CloudFront stack. Now we save also the DNS to parameter store. Like we could save some of these outputs from one stack, put them into another. That's why I like CDK, because you can make things where like one thing flows into another. And sometimes you'll have dependencies in one stack, so you could just like reference those into the next stack. So super easy way to do that. We already have this deployed, but now when we deploy the CloudFront stack, CloudFront gets deployed, and now you can add Shield and WAF. So those then get added in addition to your CloudFront. So now we want to deploy the server. So we already built the app, and that's kind of why we were like building a lot of this stuff of like how would users interface with this. The app needs to connect to the server, but users don't need to access the server. The server is going to be locked down to our specific cloud environment. That doesn't need to be open to the internet, because we could have like other services that go and do that. So we have a fast API server. This is going to also be Dockerized in that same exact way, pushed to ECR. And then when we deploy our EKS server stack, we already have the app, which is deployed on EKS. We're then going to, and that's also like with the Elastic Load Balancer, we now have the server, and that's from this stack. So this stack will deploy the server, and now we have the same type of structure, one AZ, AZ number 2, and the app can talk to the server. But the server isn't necessarily exposed to the internet. That's what the app is. The app can connect to the server, and they're all within the same VPC. So how do we know if our users' data is secure? That's also a great question. A lot of these vibe coding platforms, they can't actually validate if like your user stuff is safe. So with AWS, there are sort of 3 flavors of auditing and logging that are really important, not necessarily from like an auditing perspective, unless you're like working in like a very like commercialized space or like you have to do like auditing and logging, more for yourself. So like the chain of command of like a user needs to do this thing, how do you see that actually come up in your system? So CloudWatch is a really great way to see that. CloudTrail is really good for like AWS actions that you or another developer might make. And then EventBridge also for events, especially if you're doing like queues or like events in the future, like EventBridge is really great to see stuff happening currently and over time. And you could just add logging to your functions. Really great way to just like see what's happening across your system. So visibility across users. So a user that's authenticated logs in, they might use your API, they might go to the database, and then by that action, you could then see actions pop up in CloudWatch, CloudTrail, or EventBridge. And you just see this, like the visibility is just really helpful to see how this is happening. Now, secure containerized RAG with AWS. So how do we think about working with files? So again, a user is going to log in. They're going to access authentication. So Cognito. Cognito will give you access to API routes. You'll be able to access the database. Also, if you're doing maybe some sort of streaming, like you be using API Gateway. But either of these API endpoints, they're going to be using your EKS, which is the app plus server component. And then that also might reference some DynamoDB stuff of like reference a conversation. So make a conversation for this document. Now the document is going to be referenced via Amazon Bedrock Knowledge Base, and then you might have OpenSearch Service. So this is OpenSearch Service. OpenSearch Service serverless is going to be like how you access the kind of like your RAG, if you will, your vector database. Now, the vector store plus knowledge base, this was a little bit of like a catch-22, so just sharing this for like context and clarity. If you want to build this type of system, you need to deploy the OpenSearch stuff first. So you need like OpenSearch serverless to be deployed and running before you start building the knowledge base. So when you deploy the knowledge base stack, you need the OpenSearch stuff to exist so that it can be referenced in the knowledge base from Bedrock. So it's kind of, this is like you need one thing that's the output, becomes the input of the second part. And then when you want to sync the knowledge base, so you're going to have the user log in, they're going to access your API, you're going to access the app, that's going to then basically work from S3, which is like where the files live. The file is going to get uploaded, and then there's going to be sort of an S3 bucket action. So on an upload or a write, that's going to trigger this event bridge. This is then going to go to a Lambda function. The Lambda function is then going to do an ingestion job. It's going to fire off to do the data sync to Bedrock, and then that's going to update what's in OpenSearch Service serverless, so your vector DB. Now, are our user uploads malware free? That's another question that we had in the beginning, and we don't really know. So we don't really know, because if a user just uploads a file, like we're just like, oh, okay, like it's somewhere in the cloud, file's there, great. But if there's a virus in that file, if it's malware, if it's like a bad thing, how do we know that it's a bad thing? We wouldn't actually know with a lot of these Gen AI or vibe coding systems. And what becomes a problem, and I worked on a social media platform like several years ago, and this was actually like a really important concept to think about, where if you have a file, now we're outside of the AI scope, but think like if you have a social media platform and you share a file, and that file is then seen by that person's followers, if there's like bad stuff in that file and that file gets downloaded in like the browser, for example, well now like if other people see that stuff, they're also infected. So a lot of these social media platforms need to spend a lot of time to build security into how files get managed. I think a vulnerability now with a lot of these AI systems is like if you didn't have siloed tenants for specific users, let's say that you uploaded like a bad file. Like a bad person will upload a bad file. But then let's say that file was like used in a RAG system. You could pollute what a prompt sends back to a company. Like if you knew where certain like files lived, you could like upload a file potentially, and that could get referenced when a company like looks up stuff. And then it could like send back gibberish, or it could send back like wrong information if you were able to like get that file in the pipeline. So that's why you really need to make sure like user data gets siloed per company or per tenant or per user, so that you can't have any of that pollution also. But yeah, just super, super important. Think about zero trust. So a secure file upload pattern would be a user tries to upload a file. That's then going to try to upload to S3. You're going to get a pre-signed URL. That pre-signed URL will allow that user to upload that file. But this is like happening in the background. This is just functionally how this will work. Now, the file is going to go right up to Amazon Guard Duty malware protection for S3, which is quite a mouthful of a service name. But what it's going to do is basically check if that file is safe. So it runs in like maybe a second or two, like it's very, very fast. And if it's safe, we could say, hey, put it in the production bucket. Now it goes from the upload bucket to the production bucket. If it's not safe and it actually is flagged with malware, it's going to go into the quarantine bucket. It's going to get removed from here. You're going to then get logs, and you're basically going to get an alert that this happened. But this is where you're going to make sure that like users just can't upload like anything. We're going to make sure that this actually is happening. And if you can't validate that your Gen AI system is doing this, then like someone's going to start asking questions. If you start getting buy-in, they're going to start wondering like, whoa, like what do you do with my files? And if you can't answer this question, then like that's not a good place to be in. Let me tell you. So how are you tracking how your users use your features? So we talked about the denial of wallet vulnerability from earlier. Now, how do users use your systems? If they just have unfederated access to your stuff, now your user use your AI system, for example. If you don't have rate limiting, you're going to become like your customers like favorite LM. They're going to drop their $20 subscription to like all their tools, and they're just going to start using your app for all their AI stuff. So you don't really want to have that happen. And why this matters is because like if you have one user, you have twos or whatever. Let's say you have like 1,000 people. You have like 10,000 people doing something on your application. Well, if they can do basically unlimited actions related to AI, and you're not actually like maybe you tell them that like they have 10 requests a day. But if you don't actually do that, well, then now you're going to run up a huge bill. And that's where like your budgets are going to skyrocket. And then you really need to like catch this before you wake up the next day and you have like a $5,000 or like a $10,000 bill. So one easy way to do this is to track tokens. So like one token is about 4 characters of text. So you could literally just do some very easy, like a lot of these LLMs will have their own packages, but like let's say that you're using an LLM and it doesn't have those types of packages. You could do this tracking, and then you could say like, hey, you get like, I don't know, 10,000 tokens a day or like 100,000 tokens a day. And then you just track this all manually. And then also with rate limits. So let's say that you can only call a certain service like 10 times. You just have databases that track the tokens, and you track basically their rate limits. And then you'll be able to basically see like, hey, like, does this work? And then maybe every 24 hours, you just have a cron job that will reset each person to 0 after a certain time, or like after sign up. Really easy way to just like make sure that users don't have like unfederated access to stuff. And then just to kind of sum up, automating the security process. So setting up Amazon Q for PR code reviews. We use Amazon Q. We saw that with the VS Code extension for malware protections and for basically vulnerabilities in the code base. So you just add Amazon Q to your IAM Identity Center. You then can add it to your Git provider. So when users upload to Git, or they pull a PR, that's going to then call IAM. IAM is going to call Amazon Q, and then it's going to do PR review, which is really, really helpful. So I use this for a lot of clients now. If we're building within AWS, it's just, and I also run this on my own workloads if I'm hosting something for a client. But like super, super easy, because then you just add Amazon Q to your repository. Now when you basically like push a PR, it's gonna like assess all of your code. It has like very extensive notes about like what it's doing, and then it'll also maybe block your ability to merge something if checks weren't successful. So really great way to just like have just like automated PR scanning. Oh, I just saw from Daryl, we've used a tool called, I haven't merged as well for PRs. I haven't used that tool, but I would love to talk to you like offline about that, because there's like a lot of these really helpful code scanning systems, and it's just kind of like, it's just easy. You just add it to your code, and it just like does its thing, and it just works. So adding AI to your code, like you might not even use the comments, but it's helpful to have them as like an AI buddy that's just like helping you with your system. Okay, so to sum up, what does all this mean? So for all intents and purposes, this app looks basically like what we already had. And you're probably thinking like, Brian, you just took like an hour to show me an app that I already had. Like, what's the purpose of this? The real purpose of this is that we actually can validate that this is ready for production, because now our checklist checks out, and we can actually validate that our dependencies are secure. We do have zero trust architecture, and we can validate that that is the case. Authentication, authorization, we understand what users can and can't do. DDoS and bot attack protections, we actually know that we have those systems in place. We implemented rate limits and spam monitoring. We can scale. We know that we can scale because we're using all the systems that, like all of your production apps that you use on your phone, on your laptop, they're running in the cloud. We all know that those work because they're probably running on AWS or our cloud, and we know that those work. We have logging, we have denial of wallet prevention mechanisms, so we track our users. We're not going to wake up with that 5 or 10K bill. File malware upload scanning, we actually know that our files are, scanned when they are uploaded. And then we have role-based access control and granular permission. So we have RBAC. We have all the things that we need for our actual real application. So the production playbook is these 10 steps. And if you can do these 10 steps, then you're on your way to building real production grade applications. So AI code reviews, automated code scanning, file upload protection, API protections, rate limits and token tracking, auth and authentication, data being siloed per user and per tenant, logging and observability, securitized resource group IAM roles, and automated AI and data pipelines. If you have these 10 things, you're well on your way to building, $1 million app or even more. Don't set the ceiling just as a million. Go bigger than that. So in the sense of this code, this is a QR code where you can get access to all of the code that I referenced. So you're going to get the Next.js application, the Python fast API server, the CDK implementation of how you actually deploy this stuff, and then also seeing how you can do the CI/CD pipelines. So since this is recorded, you'll be able to look at this on the playback, but that's also the URL right here if you want to check it out. So that is why vibe coding isn't enough. And I hope that this inspires you to see that I could leverage AI and it could help me accelerate. But then you sort of want to think about okay, if it's that easy, what am I missing? And there's probably a lot of other stuff that you might be missing. So you could take the AI, productionize it, and then you're on your way to 1 million users. So thanks for listening to this.
That was really amazing. I have been,
Thanks, Errol.
yes, I have been vibing, vibing along with you, and we've been chatting in the comments as you see. So it's a very hot topic now, the AI and the whole vibe coding thing. And I'm really impressed by this presentation and the work you've done because I think
Thanks, man.
most of us are developers here and we want to see how to make our lives better. So if anybody has any question for Brian, you can either turn on the mic and ask, or you can leave it in the chat. He's definitely going to respond to you. But Brian, it's really been a very wonderful session.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me. I see one question from Bhavesh. Based on your experience, how much AI agents have helped building behind the scene missing points? Bhavesh, question to your question. Maybe you could write in the chat. I just would be curious. Do you mean AI agents like code builders, like a Kiro or a Cursor, or do you mean more like a Devin, like you have an AI that's reviewing your code or like an Amazon queue? Because I've experimented with both, and I feel like I'm just curious from your perspective. App is built, but security's. Oh, I see what you mean. So security stuff. Yeah, I mean, I think so. I've used other tools like Snake or Sneak. I think it's Sneak for code scanning and reviews and those types of things. But then also like Amazon Q as an agent. I think I personally I like to be able to know what an agent thinks, but I don't necessarily want to have an agent go full ham on a repo. That stuff just makes me nervous because I feel you see all these there was a really, I want to say famous. There was a viral post that came up where someone was building, I think it was Replit, and they woke up and their entire database was just
Really
deleted.
did.
Yeah,
Yeah, I got that.
yeah,
Yeah.
you know what I'm talking about? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's that's can you imagine that, sir? That's crazy. You just wake up and you're your infrastructure is just gone. And it's could you think about it, could we have talked about this? Could we have had a conversation? No, just straight up in the trash can. So I feel I like to have the AI superpowers, but I like to be very much in the driver's seat, being able to decide stuff. But I mean but then again though, maybe that's a little bit hypocritical because I kind of showed you oh yeah, you could use Amazon Q to scan your code and update stuff. So I think it's a lot of it is use the tool but verify that it worked and then implement it. But just having these autonomous agents that do stuff kind of my hot take is I think there's a lot of marketing buzz about these things and too much marketing hype and not enough actually people are using this and enjoying it. So I don't know, maybe that's a spicy take. I see the marketing, but then I don't actually see it being leveraged. So I don't know. I'm curious what people think as well.
I
Uh,
think a lot of the people that are, sorry, I think a lot of the people that are management people are looking at this as, hey, I can pay very little money and get a whole lot of productivity from people that like non-experienced developers. But I think the key is that you need to know what the code is supposed to do. You need to have experience of doing things the right way. And then these assistants can really help increase productivity because they can go away and do things and then you can verify it when it's done. It's much more difficult to just say, go and do this from some inexperienced developer, go and do this. It may work, but it's probably terrible code and not maintainable. I think the key is you need to have somebody that really knows what they're doing to oversee. It's an assistant. It's not actually something that can take things and do it all on its own. That's my opinion.
Oh, 1,000,000%. I totally agree with that. And it's cool. Like I think I've had like even like non-technical people like flag tools to me, and then it becomes like I test it out and I'm like, oh, this is cool. But I think Daryl, like you said, it's kind of like you need an experienced developer who knows how to leverage this stuff. So it's kind of like it'll outperform someone that's not using these tools, but you just have to like you need to have a developer in the driver's seat using these tools. So I totally agree with what you said. Oh, I see another question. What's your take on adding security points on the context and in general context engineering vibe coding? Vivesh, do you mean like when you're so like you're adding like a security checkpoint, or like you do you mean like if you're prompting and you have do you, it's like with spec-driven development where you'd be like you do this thing, like have it do the thing, and then it's like also do a security scan. Like is that more of what you mean when you say like add to okay, yeah. So I think that like spec-driven development can be helpful, but again, like I still feel like there's certain parts where like it might be like overkill, where like if you're like installing like a component, I don't know like if people here have used like ShadCN as a component library or Material UI, but those are just like component libraries. You just like npm install it for an app, and then you could get like a select drop down or a menu or like a pop-up or something like that. So if you're just like using just like a regular component, you probably don't need to like code scan that. You could just do like npm audit. So that's kind of where like I've noticed that there's like you're gonna burn a lot of tokens or credits or money or just like requests to like have it do extra steps as opposed to things that like you can do. So I do encourage people to like understand how these security systems work, because like if you can just run like a script that does something and check something, you could just do that. But like to have it spend like 2 or 3 requests or prompts to like do something that you can do manually, it'll save you a lot of money. So that's kind of where like knowing how you can do a lot of these like steps can just like help you just like move faster, just so you don't need the AI to do it. I know there's a lot of people that also use like AI agents for like Git commands, so they'll like chat with Git and be like push this code to whatever. But then it's like you're burning the credits, you know, like you're burning your request. Like you could just be like GitHub desktop and just do like commit, deploy. Like there's a lot of stuff that can just save you money as opposed to needing like the prompt, the AI to do all the steps every time.
Okay, that's good. Thanks so much for your contributions, Bhavesh. So, I have a question, Brian. Like you,
Yeah.
I know Chris also is interested in getting his feet wet. What advice can you give to a developer who wants to transition into building AI applications and especially securely, just like again, somebody who's starting, yeah, just beginning right now.
Yeah. Chris, I just have a question for you. Are you familiar with like React or Next.js?
I
It's okay if the
literally
answer
just
is
gave
no.
myself like a 1 month crash course in React. That's about my familiarity.
Okay, perfect. That's all you need to start. Okay, cool. So for anyone else that's like not familiar, React was formerly maintained by Facebook. They made like this really innovative framework to just build Lego block components, and that's how you build UIs. So it's really easy to like work within that framework. Vercel took on React and then made a fork of it, and then they made this platform called Next.js. So Next.js is heavily built with TypeScript. It uses Tailwind CSS, and it uses like a lot of these like very modern practices. And I would encourage anyone to like first of all go through the Next.js documentation. They have a guide on that. That's going to be how you build like a front end app. Now it'll basically build like a UI. What would be really cool for you, I think, is there's a framework called Amplify from AWS, and it's like really great to be able to like use CDK, which is what you saw, but with abstractions. So you want to like add authentication, you want to add file storage, you want to add Lambda functions that do stuff. If you go through the Amplify docs for Next.js, that will walk you through a lot of really cool ways to build apps. Now, if you want to like pump it up a little bit, what you could do is that you could have your app, so your Next.js app running locally. You could go through the Fast API documentation. Fast API is going to be like how you build a server. And what's I think a really great kind of like mega skill, if you will, is like have your Next.js app talk to a server. So you have them both running locally and be able to like hit an endpoint to talk to the server. Um, Oh, Daryl, yeah, Fast API React.js is a good combo in my opinion. Yeah, because it's cool because you can like learn how different servers work, and then Chris, I know you said you want to like get your feet wet in AWS. If you can learn like how to run those systems locally, when you put it on the cloud, that's what all enterprise companies have. They'll have stuff running in servers, they'll have stuff in apps, and it's like, how do you get them to talk to each other? Those are like goated skills, like gold. If you can like learn how that type of stuff works, you're ready to work at any enterprise big tech company. So I just think like start locally, like start with Next.js, start with Amplify, and then once you get familiar with that, then level on the server component of it. And then once you understand the server, then you're like, okay, how do I deploy this? So then you think CDK would be great. Terraform is another great one. Kind of like I mainly use those two for infrastructure as code. And infrastructure code is just like a recipe to just deploy it to the cloud. So that's kind of like your steps, I would say, to then learn how AWS works, and then you're good.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, that's cool. So yes, I see Carl has a question. Yes, Carl, you can go ahead.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ryan, for the amazing presentation. I have two questions. Actually, I'll start with the first. I would like to know, I am into cybersecurity. Like I've been in cybersecurity for 2 years. I want to know what are the opportunities around Gen AI for cybersecurity specialists. That's the first question. And secondly, I'll ask, with the advent of ChatGPT, with GPT-5, like what are the opportunities that exist for developers or IT experts around GPT-5, the coming of GPT-5, what changes, what innovations has it brought, and what are the downsides of GPT-5? Are there guardrails? Are there no guardrails or other things that may be like downsides to security or any other thing? Thank you.
Yeah, girl, thanks for attending. Nice to meet you. Just a question. When you say cybersecurity, are you more on like is that like the pen testing side or more like
Um,
SRE?
SOC.
Okay.
Security Operations Center, yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of opportunities for AI with security. I mean, I would look at I mentioned this before, but like I would look at Amazon Q from like how it reviews code. I would look at Sneak. Sneak is really cool for like PR processes of like when you are working with like a code base and you install a package, you can even do something where like before you commit you'll have like an action that will like review your code before it actually gets committed to that. Like I would look at, and that's literally like shifting security left. I would look at that as like a paradigm concept, and then just explore all the different tools and technologies, because there's a lot of like third party companies that built like really cool security stuff. And I use like I've just from like hacking around on a project or like building around, like I've ended up incorporating a lot of those tools into my workflows. So I think the best way to learn like opportunities in AI with security is just to like build something. So like if you wanted to test like you wanted to have like a pipeline, you want to like do something, build like a model, like an AI model, and then get it live, you sort of think about like what are the security checkpoints that it would take to actually get this into the hands of users or an app. So I think it's just like fine, like have a really clear vision of like what you want to build, and then just like build in security layers around it. And so I hope that's helpful. Is that aligned kind of more with like what you're thinking of? Okay, cool. And then GPT-5, it's very interesting. Like I think I started using it and I didn't really notice like a big difference between like 4.0 to 5. And then I started thinking like, oh, there is helpful information related to context of like like context windows, and like how like if you wanted to have like a really big prompt, especially with like prompt like tool chaining, or like if you have like tool calls that would like eat up like your prompt. So now you have like huge context windows to do this. The cost though is going to be, I think, the main downside of this, where and I'm noticing that a lot of different frameworks, like Amazon Bedrock has basically like it will like change the model based upon the type of prompt that it is. But I'm noticing that there's a lot of frameworks now where not everything needs to be like a certain model. So if you're using like, I don't know, like Claude 4.0, you might want to use Claude 3.7. But I think like it's being able to say like what's a GPT-5 type like request versus like what could you use on like a lighter version of a model. So I just think like there's a lot of cost savings that can come from using smaller models. But even like if you get a prompt and you want to sort of like decide like which model does it need to be, you could just have like, and I think OpenRouter is like probably like the de facto standard of like if you have a prompt, it will like liaise to whichever model it thinks is like the best model for the prompt. But just think about that as a way to like save yourself a lot of money, because if like people just use like the latest and greatest model, not every prompt needs the latest and greatest model. Sometimes you could just use a smaller model. So I think there's huge opportunity in the sense of like what the models can do, but just the downside will be cost. So you just want to think about how are you curbing using the latest and greatest with like not running up a huge bill.
And maybe the complexity of the problem too as well may determine which model you're going with.
1,000%. Yeah, I feel like I was using a lot of like it was like the or like the mini high or like using different like algorithmic or like logistical reasoning models. But now I like being able to just use like a singular model to like do that, because sometimes it gets nebulous of how does a model give a response versus like just having like a standard way of how a single model works. So yeah, being able not needing to do the context switching as much. I think that helps a lot.
Yeah, just to add, Carl, I mean the first point, how GenAI or the LLMs can help you with the cybersecurity. I know I've heard a lot of reports like that where some CEOs, some companies, when they move from traditional ML to using LLMs or GenAI, they got more performance with in terms of their cybersecurity. So I'm even currently working on a project. I think that will be out soon. I'll probably even present it one of these days. It's more of I'm just building an automated threat detection system. So I'm building it using AWS Bedrock and Pinecone. So the system analyzes SSH attacks data from a honeypot, and then it's going to use Claude AI to determine the threat severity, and then stores that in Pinecone for similarity search, as well as alerts through CloudWatch that this is a very severe, maybe somebody's uploading a malware. So it's going to, so all of that is what the SOC will be doing, right? In cybersecurity, but now we get the help.
Exactly.
Yes, now we'll get the help from AI because we are going to have a honeypot, trap the hackers. They're coming, we see the patterns, and we see how they are trying to attack the system. And if the severity gets too high, you get an immediate email, SNS, you get an alert for that. So that is something I'm working on. I'll probably share that subsequently. So let's just stay connected, and that will help SOC, especially, I believe, just showing you how the wall of GenAI can come make your life easy. Yeah, just wanted
Yeah.
to add. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
So let me know when that's available. I want to check that out. That sounds so cool.
Yeah,
Sounds
yeah.
amazing. Sounds
I
amazing.
know.
Yeah. Yeah,
Get us on the
I
wait
will
list.
definitely present it to, yes, we'll surely book a session and we'll talk about it, yes, with the community here. Yeah.
Because some companies present it like in their CM package, maybe things like Kaspersky, they have Kuma and all the rest for this type of threat detection things with endpoint devices. So it sounds really interesting.
We'll plan, yes, and share with the community. So thanks so much, Brian. Thanks for
Yeah.
coming to share with us. It's really been rich, and all of us are in the vibes of vibe coding, and we are going to glide along with the inspiration from you. Thanks for your contributions as well. Everybody who contributed. Okay, see you next month.
Thanks, everybody.
See ya. Thanks for having me.